Before you scroll, just give me a quiet moment, because if you've been holding something in lately, something you never fully put into words, something you carried without anyone really noticing, this message found you for a reason. There's a kind of pain that doesn't make noise. It doesn't break things on the outside. It doesn't ask to be seen. It just settles quietly in the spaces no one else can reach. And somehow, you learned how to live with it. You showed up. You responded when people spoke to you. You smiled when it was expected. You kept things moving, even on days where something inside you felt heavy in a way you couldn't explain. And the world kept going as if everything was normal, because from the outside, it looked like you were fine. But you knew the truth. You knew how much it took just to hold yourself together. You knew the moments where your thoughts became overwhelming, where silence felt louder than anything around you, where you had to sit with emotions that didn't have anywhere to go. And still, you didn't let it spill onto others. You carried it, quietly, carefully, without asking for attention. And that kind of strength, it doesn't get recognized the way it should, because people don't always see what isn't expressed. They don't always understand the battles that are fought internally, the restraint it takes not to react, the discipline it takes to stay gentle when you're hurting. They see your composure, but not the effort behind it. And I know, there were moments where you questioned whether it even mattered. Moments where you wondered if being this way, being patient, being understanding, being kind was costing you more than it was giving back. Moments where it felt like the world responded more easily to hardness, while your softness remained unseen. But listen closely. Nothing you carried in silence was ever meaningless. Not the tears you held back. Not the nights you processed everything alone. Not the moments you chose peace when you could have chosen something else. All of it mattered, in ways you couldn't measure at the time. Because there is a difference between what is visible and what is valued at a deeper level. And what you've been building, it wasn't meant to be loud. It was meant to be real. So even if a part of you still feels unseen, still feels like no one fully understands what you've been through, don't let that make you question your path. Because this wasn't about being noticed. It was about becoming. And in the next part, we're going to gently step into something that may change the way you see yourself. Because the way you chose to respond, the way you protected your heart without closing it, that choice shaped something far more powerful than you realize. There were moments, more than you probably admit, where it would have been easier to change. Not in a dramatic way, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, becoming a little colder, a little more distant, a little less affected by everything around you. Because after being hurt, after being misunderstood, after giving your energy in places where it wasn't fully received, something in you naturally wanted to protect itself. And the simplest form of protection would have been to stop feeling so much, to stop caring so deeply, to stop giving without guarantee, to stop showing up with softness in a world that didn't always return it. And honestly, no one would have blamed you. Most people would have understood if you chose to become harder, more guarded, more selective in a way that shut things out completely. It would have made sense. It would have been logical. It would have felt safer. But you didn't fully go that way. Even when it was difficult, even when it felt unfair, even when you were tired in ways that didn't have a clear explanation, you held on to something within you, something gentle. Not perfectly, not without moments of doubt, but intentionally. And that choice, it says more about you than anything you've been through. Because choosing grace, especially when you've experienced pain, is not something people talk about enough. It's often misunderstood as weakness, as naivety, as being too soft for the world. But the truth is, it requires a level of awareness and strength that most people don't reach. Because you knew what it felt like to be hurt, and you chose not to become the source of that for someone else. You knew what it felt like to be misunderstood, and you still tried to understand. You knew what it felt like to be let down, and you didn't let that turn into something harsh within you. And that's not accidental. That's character. Because every time you paused instead of reacting, every time you chose silence instead of escalating, every time you walked away instead of proving a point, You were shaping something inside yourself that goes far beyond the situation you were in. You were building stability. Not the kind that depends on how others treat you, but the kind that comes from knowing who you are regardless of what's happening around you. And I know there were moments where that felt heavy. Moments where you thought, why do I have to be the one who stays calm? Why do I have to be the one who understands? Why does it feel like I'm doing the work while others move on without thinking twice? Those questions, they're real. Because choosing grace doesn't mean you didn't feel the impact of what happened. It means you felt it and still chose not to let it reshape you into something you're not. And over time, that choice created something within you. A quiet strength, a grounded presence, a kind of emotional clarity that doesn't need to prove itself because it simply exists. You don't react the same way anymore. You don't get pulled into the same cycles. You don't feel the need to match energy just to feel balanced. You've changed not because the world forced you to, but because you chose how you wanted to respond to it. And here's what matters most. You didn't lose anything by choosing grace. You refined yourself, even if no one saw it, even if no one acknowledged it, even if it felt one-sided at the time. Because what you were building, it wasn't for the moment. It was for your life. And in the next part, we're going to step into what that actually creates over time. Because the kindness you carried, the integrity you held onto, it didn't disappear. It accumulated. There's something about being kind, when it isn't returned, that can make you question everything. Not loudly, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, in moments where you're alone, reflecting, wondering if the way you've been moving through life is actually working for you. Because when your patience isn't acknowledged, when your understanding is overlooked, when your effort seems to disappear into situations that never fully give back, it can feel like you're giving something that holds no value. And that's where the doubt begins. You start to wonder if maybe being this way is costing you too much. If maybe the world responds better to people who take more than they give. If maybe your softness, your restraint, your integrity are things that don't actually create anything meaningful in return. But what you couldn't see was what was being built. Because the kind of kindness you carried, it wasn't surface level. It wasn't casual. It wasn't something you gave when it was easy and pulled back when it wasn't. It was something you held on to even when it required something from you. Even when it asked you to pause, to reflect, to choose differently than your emotions were telling you to in the moment. And that kind of choice, it doesn't disappear. It accumulates. Not in a way that feels immediate, not in a way that shows up instantly as a reward or recognition, but in a way that shapes your entire foundation over time. Because every time you chose integrity over impulse, you strengthened your awareness. Every time you chose patience over reaction, you created space for clarity instead of chaos. Every time you chose to remain grounded, even when everything around you felt unstable, you built something within yourself that cannot be easily shaken. And that's the part most people miss. Because they measure value based on what is visible, on what is returned quickly, on what can be proven in the moment. But what you were building was not meant to be immediate. It was meant to be lasting. Because the way you move determines what you align with. And over time, your choices have been guiding you away from environments that require you to lose yourself, and toward ones that can actually hold who you are without diminishing it, even if you didn't realize it at the time, even if it felt like you were giving more than you were receiving, even if it felt like nothing was changing, because something was changing. Your standards shifted, your awareness deepened, your tolerance for what doesn't align became lower. And that changes everything, because now you're no longer available for the same patterns. You're no longer drawn to the same kinds of situations. You're no longer willing to stay in places that require you to compromise your sense of peace just to maintain them. You've outgrown that, not by force, but by choice. And that's what your kindness created. Not weakness, not loss, but alignment. So when you look back, even at the moments that felt one-sided, even at the times you gave without receiving, understand this. You were not losing. You were investing. investing into a version of yourself that can now recognize what is real and walk away from what is not. And in the next part, we're going to step into how that begins to reflect back into your life. Because there comes a moment where everything you've built internally starts to show itself externally, not through validation, but through quiet, undeniable shifts. There's a kind of vindication that doesn't arrive the way you once imagined it would. It doesn't come with a moment where everything is explained, where people suddenly understand you perfectly, where the past is revisited and corrected. It doesn't come with dramatic realizations or emotional confrontations where everything is finally made clear. Instead, it arrives quietly, almost so quietly that you don't notice it at first. Because for a long time, there may have been a part of you that wanted to be seen, not in a loud or attention-seeking way, but in a human way. A part of you that wanted someone to recognize what you carried, to understand why you moved the way you did, to see the effort behind your silence. You didn't need applause. You just needed acknowledgement. But that moment, it didn't always come. And over time, something in you shifted. Not because you gave up, but because you grew out of needing it. You stopped explaining yourself to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped revisiting situations just to be seen more clearly. You stopped investing your energy into being validated by people who could only see you from their limited perspective. And without realizing it, you became free from it. Because now, the vindication you're stepping into doesn't feel like proving anyone wrong. It feels like no longer needing to. There's a quiet confidence that replaces that old desire for clarity from others. A grounded sense of self that doesn't require agreement, approval, or recognition to feel real. You know who you are now, without needing someone else to confirm it. And that changes everything. Because when your life begins to reflect that clarity, when your choices, your energy, your environment start to align with what you've been building internally, something happens. The people who once misunderstood you, they may start to notice. They may begin to see you differently. They may even understand things now that they couldn't before. But here's what matters most. By that time, it doesn't hold the same weight. You're not looking for it anymore. Because you've already found something more stable than being understood by everyone. You've found alignment within yourself. And that's what restores balance. Not revenge, not validation, but quiet, undeniable change. Change that places you in spaces where you no longer have to explain your depth, where you don't have to shrink to be accepted, where your presence is understood without constant effort. And that's the kind of vindication that lasts. And in the next part, we're going to step into what begins to enter your life alongside this shift. Because as your life aligns, something else follows, something softer, steadier, and deeply supportive. What begins to enter your life now won't arrive with noise. It won't feel like something you have to chase, prove, or fight to keep. In fact, the first thing you may notice is how calm it feels, almost unfamiliar at first, like your system is still adjusting to a life that no longer demands constant emotional effort just to maintain it. Because after everything you've carried, everything you've navigated quietly, you may have expected something dramatic, something overwhelming, something that clearly marks the shift. But what actually arrives is much softer than that, and somehow much more meaningful. It shows up in the way your days begin to feel lighter, not because everything is perfect, but because nothing feels as heavy as it used to. Your mind isn't constantly scanning for what could go wrong. Your body isn't holding the same level of tension. There's space now, space to think, to breathe, to exist without always bracing for the next emotional weight to arrive. And then you start to notice the people. The ones who enter your life in this season. They feel different. Not intense, not confusing, not something you have to decode or overanalyze. They meet you in a way that feels steady, like you don't have to adjust who you are just to maintain the connection. Conversations flow without effort. Silence doesn't feel uncomfortable. Presence feels real, not something you have to question. And that alone changes your understanding of connection. Because for the first time in a long time, it doesn't feel like something you have to manage. It feels like something you can simply experience. You may also notice how your environment begins to shift, even in subtle ways. The spaces you spend time in feel more peaceful. The choices you make feel more aligned. You're no longer drawn to the same patterns, the same dynamics, the same situations that once required you to give more than you received just to keep them going. And that's not accidental. That's alignment reflecting back to you. Because what you've been building internally is now shaping what you experience externally. And the most important part of all, you don't have to fight to keep this. You don't have to overextend yourself. You don't have to question it the way you used to question everything. Because what is meant to support you doesn't require you to exhaust yourself just to hold on to it. And I know a part of you might still be adjusting. Because when you've been used to intensity, to unpredictability, to emotional highs and lows, peace can feel unfamiliar. You might find yourself waiting for something to shift, wondering if this calm is temporary, if something is about to change. But this time, calm is not a warning. It's confirmation. Confirmation that you're no longer stepping into situations that test your worth. You're stepping into ones that respect it. And that's the difference. So allow yourself to receive this without questioning it too quickly, without preparing for it to disappear, without holding it at a distance just because it feels new. Because this is what you've been moving toward all along. And in the final part, we're going to anchor this into something deeper, because the most important thing now is not just receiving these blessings, but continuing to move in a way that allows them to stay. There's something you protected through everything, something that could have easily been lost along the way, something many people do lose when life gets heavy enough. And somehow you didn't. Your softness. Not in a fragile way, not in a way that makes you weak, but in a way that kept you connected to yourself even when everything around you felt disconnected. Because after everything you experienced, it would have been easier to shut down, to feel less, to move through life with a kind of distance that protects you from ever being affected that deeply again. And maybe you were close to that at times. Moments where you thought, I can't keep feeling like this. Moments where you considered becoming colder, more guarded, less available emotionally. Moments where it felt like the only way to stay safe was to stop caring so much. But you didn't stay there. Even when it was hard, even when it felt unfair, even when it seemed like the world didn't always value that part of you, you held on to it. And that matters more than you realize. Because your softness, it's not a weakness that needs to be corrected. It's a form of awareness. It's the ability to feel what others ignore, to understand without needing everything explained, to remain connected to something real in a world that often operates on surface-level interactions. It's what allowed you to move through pain without turning into it, to experience difficulty without becoming defined by it. And now, as your life begins to align differently, as the people and environments around you begin to reflect something more stable, more grounded, this softness becomes your strength in a new way. Because now, you know where it belongs. You're no longer offering it in spaces that can't hold it. You're no longer giving your energy to people who don't recognize its value. You're no longer confusing emotional intensity with real connection. You've learned. And because you've learned, you can remain open without being unprotected. That's the shift. You don't have to close your heart to stay safe. You just have to be aware of where you place it. So as you move forward, don't lose that part of yourself. Don't trade your empathy for distance. Don't replace your depth with detachment. Don't convince yourself that feeling less is the answer. Because it's not. The answer is clarity. Clarity in who you allow close. Clarity in what you give your energy to. Clarity in what truly aligns with the life you're building now. And when you move with that clarity, your softness doesn't become something that drains you. It becomes something that guides you. Something that protects you, not by shutting you down, but by helping you recognize what is real and what is not. So if this message found you in a moment where you needed it, just take a quiet second, not to say anything, not to prove anything, just to feel this truth within yourself. You went through everything you went through, and you didn't lose who you are. You didn't become cold. You didn't become disconnected. You became aware. And that awareness, that quiet strength, that ability to remain soft without being broken by it, that's not something small. That's your power.